Hello, OC Habitats family. Welcome back to our newest edition of our volunteers spotlight interview. Today, I am joined by Sheen. Sheen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, all right. Hi, guys. I'm Sheen. I'm currently a junior at USC, and I have been with OC Habitat since the beginning of 2019, so about 2 years.
So, if you could use three words to describe yourself or OC Habitats, what three words would you use?
To describe OC Habitats, I would say community, inclusivity, and future-minded or forward-thinking. For myself, I would say curious. I would say I'm a curious-minded person, um, ambitious. I could be ambitious at times, and unique. I don't know. I'm really just putting myself on a pedestal here.
Nah, you gotta hype yourself up. Don't worry about it. So I know you mentioned that you've been with OC Habitats for I think around like 2 years. What sparked your interest in helping the environment?
Well, I have an interesting backstory about this, but there was a time, I think I was like third or fourth grade, and my school went on a field trip, and it was to like a marine science center, and we had to do like a fish dissection. So my group, we were assigned, like obviously we all had a fish, and we had to cut it open, which is a bit nasty. But anyways, I cut open my fish, and I look in the stomach, and I see a plastic bag, and then I like raise my hand. I'm like, "Hello, instructor. There's a plastic bag in my fish," and the instructor's like, "Oh, that's not supposed to be there." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, I mean, obviously it's not supposed to be there, but how did it get there?" And she was like, "Well, there's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and the animals are actually ingesting it, and that's harmful and detrimental to their health." And I was like, "Oh." And that's how I kind of really just got interested in the environment, because I firsthand kind of witnessed how marine organisms and just, organisms around us in general are affected by it, and eventually we become affected by it as well.
It's really sad to see, when you're cutting open a fish that there's plastic. But I mean, I'm glad that that experience has brought you to want to work with the environment. What brought you to OC Habitat? So how did you hear about us?
Well, yeah, I'm full of stories. I have another interesting story for this one. I saw like a flyer on my, my college campus. We have like a bulletin board, and it was like in the science department, and there was like a bunch of flyers on there, and I kept walking by it each day. Like I would glance at it, but I never took time to read it. So one day I finally stop and I read it, and it talks about like, "Oh, are you interested in the environment and like, education and outreach, all these things in Orange County?" I was like, "Yo, I'm in Orange County. Like this is amazing." So then I reached out to the director, Stacy, and we met up, and then that's how I joined OC Habitats.
Oh, that's super awesome. Who knew that some random flyer would just lead you to work around with OC Habitats? It's super cool. So is there any project that you're currently working on right now?
At the moment, I'm not, but I am taking a few interesting classes this semester. One of the classes I'm taking is Sustainable Communities Planning and Policy, and I'm really excited about that class because I hope that it's going to teach me more about how to create sustainable policy going forward. Oh, if I didn't already mention this, I'm a public policy major with a concentration on environmental policy and energy policy, so it's a big thing for me. But I'm really excited about the class, and we're going to be learning about how we can not only be sustainable, but incorporate social justice and environmental justice and solve issues like environmental racism with the correct policy and planning. So I hope to learn a lot from that class and bring that knowledge with me wherever I go.
Wow, that's super awesome. I actually study urban planning, which is kind of similar. It's like a lot of policy work. And I totally agree with your point. Like, you got to bring social justice, environmental justice into our policy making. So that's super cool. And it's really good that you're studying that, because, we need more people in policy to be thinking about these types of things. How do you engage in environmental activism?
So far, I've been really focusing on educating myself on a lot of issues, because there's just some environmental issues that if you're not, dealing with them on a day-to-day basis, you simply don't know about them, and that can lead to like ignorance and just, being complacent within the situation. So I've been trying to just open my mind to things that maybe I haven't experienced in, the world of issues with the environment, but nevertheless, I should know in order to make a difference.
I think, like always, the first step is just educating yourself, which is a really important step, actually, which sometimes people may have trouble doing. So it's really great that you're doing that. What about helping our environment are you most passionate about?
Well, obviously, I like animals, and to see that a lot of species are actually being threatened or endangered is a big um, driving factor for me. I do want to protect them. I think we all have this emotional side of us that when we see other living creatures being harmed or being threatened, we want to help them. But also lately, I've been really focused on how the environment and the conditions that we live in affect us. And it's come to my attention that actually a lot of the soil, especially here in our local area, is actually contaminated with toxic materials, and it's contaminated our drinking water, and our air is becoming incredibly polluted. So how can we help other species and organisms if we ourselves are threatened and, possibly even endangered, if you look at it from that lens?
I'm super glad that you mentioned that, because I actually didn't really know about that until, classes that are focused on these types of things talked about it. And, I feel like, your everyday person who may not take these classes or have access to these classes, they don't even know about these things. So it's super great that you're, thinking about this and like being concerned about it and, pushing awareness. What part of OC Habitats are you most passionate about and are focused on in your volunteer work?
So I did a lot while I was active with OC Habitats. At the moment, I'm on a bit of a break since I'm focusing on my education. But when I was there, my favorite part was being like a volunteer educator. We went out to a few Title I schools and we did programs in collaboration with Ocean Quest. I really enjoyed teaching the children. It was just like really interesting to see how their minds are so like flexible, and they're like little sponges, and they kind of just absorb the information you give to them. And it's also incredibly unfortunate that a lot of them don't have that kind of science curriculum at their school, and they're really missing out on key issues that they could help fight because they are our future. So I really did enjoy educating them and just like seeing like the smile on their faces. Like, they're adorable, but that's besides the point. Is that it's good to know that I was able to make a difference on a more community level.
Yeah, and it's great that, through OC Habitats or even like your other volunteer work, that you're able to bring your passion and educate others, because, I feel like your passion will definitely transfer into them. I'm sure you've made like such an impression on like those young children that maybe when they grow up, they're like, what? I want to be like that girl that taught me about, environmentalism. So one of our last questions is, what have you learned throughout your volunteering period?
I guess one thing that I have learned throughout my volunteering period is that it requires you to kind of come in contact with people from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different just upbringings, and learning how to collaborate with them, understanding their perspective really goes a long way, and that you actually do learn a lot from working with other people. And it kind of does just broaden your perspective and open your mind to things that you wouldn't have thought of before. Another thing I learned during volunteering, especially with OC Habitats, is that it requires a certain amount of selflessness or service that should come from your heart. And it does naturally for most people, but it feels good to kind of activate that side of yourself, because we live in such a world where you're often so distant from your own emotions, distant from your own sense of self, that volunteering actually helps you learn something about yourself that you might not have discovered earlier, or you were just ignoring. And it's an experience that I encourage everyone to do, take part of.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say to, anyone watching, like, any advice or just like anything you want to add?
I would say that no matter how intimidating it seems that we're in a climate crisis, that we're facing so many environmental issues, that even just taking the initiative to just learn or to expose yourself to these things, or volunteering, even if it's showing up at just one event, it does make a difference, and it will definitely go a long way. So don't feel intimidated, or don't feel that you don't have power to make a change, because you do. We all do.
Whenever you do decide to become active with OC Habitats, we are ready to welcome you with open arms. Thank you, Sheen, so much for being here and for sharing all of that with us today. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Be sure to tune in next time for our next Spotlight volunteer interview. It was really nice speaking with you, Sheen.